RiseAbsorb is redefining what growers expect from phosphate fertilizer. Backed by data and built for performance, RiseAbsorb helps reduce phosphorus losses, improve uptake, and boost ROI without increasing input costs. Join the next wave of growers switching to the next generation of phosphorus fertilizers by visiting phospholutions.com.
But we're now going to talk about what's going on south of the border in the United States. We're joined right now by Representative Eric Sorensen, who is the representative for the 17th District in Illinois. So in the 17th District, you're representing Rockford, Quad Cities, Peoria, which obviously that's where there's a big cat factory in
Right.
Peoria. So you've got some agriculture in your district.
Yeah. In fact, right here, the hometown where I live is also the hometown of a guy named John Deere.
Yeah.
And Deere and Company has been a part of our DNA here in Western Illinois since 1832. When he decided to, in order to build the plow that he invented, he needed to move along the Mississippi River and be able to have the mills on the water to be able to create the power necessary. And it's still here today. And so, that's kind of one of the foundations for when I got to Congress, why I needed to be on the House Agriculture Committee, because this is such an important, not just part of our DNA, but it really drives the economy of this part of Illinois. We're far removed from the city of Chicago, but I like to say sometimes we're in eastern Iowa, and it's a different place here.
Well, longtime Chicago Bears fan right here. So go
All
Bears.
right.
Hey, let's talk about the impact of the government shutdown on agriculture. It has obviously shown itself in areas like with flight travel, which is outside of agriculture, but there's got to be some impacts inside of agriculture as well.
Yeah, thankfully, one thing that we look at is crop insurance. It's not impacted. But across the board, farmers are feeling the effects of this shutdown. Like farmers aren't able to enroll in, farm bill conservation programs. Those things are so important here for our producers. FSA loans, they stopped without government funding. And so a prolonged government shutdown will have bigger impacts in the ag sector. We talk about SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Food Program. That here, November 1st, we've never been in a situation where this country has not been able to help people who need food assistance, and that comes through the United States Department of Agriculture. Looking at how those things are moving forward, it really means that we need to get back to the work of the people and making sure that the federal government of the United States is working for the people and not just the few at the top.
Is there anything the House Ag Committee can do in the short term to try to make sure that some of those FSA offices are able to operate, or just to try to bridge the gap, so to speak, until this shutdown ends?
Yeah, Sean, I think that's a great question. And one of the problems that we have, a lot of what was in our 5-year farm bill, of course, that's 7 years now, right? The 5-year farm bill, a lot of the pieces that came out of that went into the big ugly bill, right? There's still a lot that is left. And there's a lot concerning, conservation and broadband access for our farmers, so that they can connect with precision agriculture. These things are so important. So we like to say, the skinny farm bill. Can we get that skinny farm bill across the finish line? But the problem today, Sean, is that it's not so much that the door to the committee room in House Ag is closed. It's that Speaker Mike Johnson has locked it. I don't have a key to open it up. The problem that we have today is really we have a rogue administration that is deciding to unlawfully, refuse contingency funds to help food aid, right? We already see that China hasn't bought any soybeans from the United States. And now the president wants to bail out Argentina for whatever reason. We need to get to work in House Ag. And the problem is today, I can't get that work done. And when I talk with the farmers and I talk with our producers here in Western Illinois, they're feeling it. And I'll tell you what, more and more of these farmers, which tend to lean conservative, They're getting really mad. They're getting mad that the people that have supported for years and years and years, those on the Republican side, aren't doing the job that they need them to do. And that's where we are at a precipice for where we go next. Are we going to be able to do the work for the people, or is this just going to be a political game that President Donald Trump wants to continue to play? You know, they take pride in their work. I'm talking about farmers. They prefer markets over a bailout or assistance. But these producers understand today that the pressures they're facing are beyond their own control.
Yeah, right now to me it looks like both sides just kind of refuse to budge. We're at a real where our feet are in concrete on both sides of the aisle. Obviously, the Republicans are saying, you know, we won't negotiate on those Obamacare premiums and until the government's back, and your side of the aisle is saying, I don't think so. And so
Yeah.
somebody's got to budge here.
Yeah, and so Sean, I like to be able to take this down to the most granular level, right? So I go back to my sixth grade, learning how government works from Mrs. Ralston, St. Edward's School, Rockford, Illinois. Okay, you know, in the House of Representatives, we need a simple majority to pass things to the Senate. Republicans have control, so my no vote, you know, wasn't able to stop this in the House, so it passed the House. Okay, it went to the Senate. And we need 60 votes out of the 100. It's not a simple majority. Everybody knows it takes 60 votes in the Senate. The Republicans today have 53. They need 7 votes. So they have known all along, Republicans have known all along, they need 7 extra votes. So in order to get that for anything, there's always a negotiation. There are negotiations that go on for everything. Every bill that gets passed, there are negotiations where either you meet in the middle or there's a give and a take. The problem is the Republicans in the Senate have gone home. They have said, nope, we're not going to do anything. It's my way or the highway. And Democrats are saying, we're not going to allow you to cut health care for tens of millions of Americans. We can't vote yes on that. It's on our conscience that we're not going to allow that to happen. So come negotiate with us. Let's find a good faith way of moving forward. And then in turn, let's open up the government too. And so I don't know how this impasse moves forward. That's the hard part for me,
Yeah,
right? Because
that makes
now I'm
sense.
seeing people in my communities, Sean, who are now suffering. And especially going into next week without food assistance, this political game that is being played in Washington is going to have a real effect, not just on our economy, but on real mothers and fathers trying to put food on their table, and especially as we look ahead to Thanksgiving.
There is a long-awaited meeting between President Trump and President Xi Jinping of China. There was Reuters had a story this morning that China has bought 3 cargoes of soybeans, which is really the first in this purchasing window. As a member of the House Ag Committee and obviously member of Congress, what would you like to see as an outcome this week? What needs to happen between the U.S. and China?
Look, I think there needs to be a negotiation. I mean, but we look back to 2016. Okay, in 2016, the first Trump presidency, you saw what they were willing to do to risk our relationship with China. And then what China has done in the interim is they have created the relationships with Argentina and Brazil so that they didn't need the United States as exports anymore. And that was a problem because if we lose that relationship, that trading partner with China, we're going to have to find it in some place else. You know, and so I have always been about opening up markets, you know, for everyone in North America to be able to trade with Africa and Asia and South America, to be able to do what we need to do so that our GDP in North America can go up. You know, and so it's not just hoping that something happens. I sent a letter to President Trump with the Illinois delegation, you know, just this week asking him to end the reckless trade war that is crushing our ag economy. You know, when people think of Illinois, they immediately think of Chicago. but our number one economy in the state of Illinois, it's agriculture.
Yeah. And you know, we mentioned John Deere and Cat earlier. It makes me think of this, you know, tariffs on things like steel, which would be having a major impact. John Deere alone is talking about having to pay in this fiscal year about I think it's $500 million in tariff funds. What needs to happen there? Are you hearing from those companies and the impact it's having on their businesses?
So not only am I hearing from Caterpillar, which has a huge presence in Peoria, Illinois, I'm hearing that from John Deere and Deere and Company, which is headquartered in Moline. But then also, as I talk with you, I am less than 1 mile from the Mississippi River. Across the Mississippi River is Arconic, and Arconic has the largest aluminum press in the world. And that is, as the crow flies, maybe 2 miles from where I sit. A lot of the aluminum that they will press there into, you know, whether it is Ford trucks or whether it is parts of a John Deere implement, a majority of the aluminum that is pressed here comes from Canada. And they have told me that the contracts that they have with those big companies were decided years ago. And now, if that commodity that is being imported to the United States from Canada is now exorbitantly priced because we're tariffing ourselves, it means that our own economy is going to take a hit. And so we have to make sure that our trading partners understand that this is a give and take. You know, I talk with folks, you know, up into the Dakotas and Minnesota, you know, that are raising sows in Manitoba and Alberta, right? And then those sows come across the border. They're subject to a tariff. All right. Then they're raised and they go to a pork processing. Then they go back across the border and they get tariffed again. And then when the bacon comes to the United States, it gets tariffed again. These trade wars don't work for the consumer, because the consumers, real people, pay the price.
Representative Sorensen, before we wrap up, I'm curious if we do start to see China pick up their buying of U.S. soybeans, as an example, along with other commodities, but soybeans are getting the attention. Does there still need to be an assistance package to farmers while we wait for that big, beautiful bill to kick in?
You know, I don't think that, you know, just getting soybeans back is going to make our ag sector whole. And I've said this from the very beginning. We're going to need to rethink agriculture, right? We're going to need to rethink how we do what we do. Not only are we raising, you know, food that is feeding the world, but we're also growing our homegrown energy. And so we're going to need some assistance for our farmers, because when you look at the cost of new implements and you look at the cost of inputs, which are going sky high when we talk about seed prices and pesticides and fertilizers, we're going to need a bridge. And a lot of that is due to Trump's executive orders. You know, and our producers here in the Midwest, they prefer good markets. They want good policy. They don't want to bail out. And I think, you know, if we're able to do the things that we can, expedite down the Mississippi rivers to get our products to market, diversifying markets, these are all keys for agriculture. But we have to make sure that we don't just do what is in our headlights. We have to understand on the road map where we're going.
We have been talking to Representative Eric Sorensen. He represents the 17th District in Illinois. Congressman, thank you so much for joining us here today on Real Ag Radio. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.